This is a recording of a live presentation given on December 4th, 2021 for the Seed Library of Los Angeles, Altadena. Sorry about that.
I've got rosemary, lemon balm, yarrow, garden sage. And so really, I think the most important things to take away any stress or pressure that there's a right way to do this and that there's a specific recipe to follow, because the truth is it's not. And fire cider really comes from, the term was coined in 1970 by Rosemary Gladstar, but the principles of it are really ancient and before pre-recorded history. So the ingredients that we're using today are really just humble superfoods that are growing in nearly any garden in any continent. So they're basically like grandmother's secrets to immunity. And these, I see Jessica has just put that handout in the chat. So if you guys want to open that and follow along, you may. So we're talking about superfoods here, and we don't have to go to the Brazilian rainforest and extract their resources. We can just use, you know, basic North American humble ingredients from the garden and have incredible immune boosting digestive effects. Vinegar comes from, we have it in recorded history from over 5,000 BC. So really, really old. People have been using vinegar to preserve foods for a long time. And so that's one of the things that we love about this, is that it's shelf stable. You're using a raw apple cider vinegar with the mother in it. And vinegar is one of those ingredients that helps us preserve food, just like alcohol. And this is another way to kind of extend your harvest. You know, you have things that are seasonal, and you might have, you know, a huge flush of herbs or peppers or citrus. This is a great way to actually preserve food and have something really fresh through the winter. And I know that's a concept that's far from us here. We don't get any snow, but for those who live elsewhere, it's really nice to have something fresh. The other thing is that I mentioned Rosemary Gladstar, who coined the term fire cider in 1970. In describing the history of fire cider, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the recent lawsuit debacle that has since resolved. So there was a small company who decided to copyright the term fire cider. And in doing so, they began suing small herbalists who were selling their wares at farmers markets. And the herbalism community got really upset because, again, this is like trying to copyright like peppermint tea or something, right? It's like, nobody has the right to do that. This is a part of every person's kitchen. And so after a long lawsuit, all the herbalists who band together actually did win. So the term fire cider is now free again to use for all people, which is a really nice and special thing. Okay, so I want to see if anybody, do we have any people on their cameras? You guys are all hiding. Okay. All right, so we can get started here. And I've pre-chopped a few things just so that I'm not like totally crying while I cut my onions for you guys.
Before you get rolling here, there's just a couple of things I want to say. Everyone should be aware that we are recording, because the we are recording notice popped up on the screen. If you don't want to be in the recording, then just keep your video off. If you don't have a problem with being in the recording and have questions as we go, it's good to turn your video on so that Gina can see where you are in the process. And we will periodically unmute all of the microphones. And if you have questions, you'll still need to unmute yourself personally. And so you can ask a question. And I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks, Gina.
Okay, so I did want to cover jars. The recipe that I made is using this sized jar, which, what are we? 32 ounces. You don't have to use a jar that big. This is huge, and I realize that. The reason I like it is because it perfectly fits your typical 32-ounce jar. You guys are probably used to seeing Bragg's. It doesn't matter what brand, so long as it's raw apple cider vinegar. And I just like the 32-ounce jar because it easily fits inside that. If you don't have, and this is from IKEA, and it has a nice rubber gasket, and it's usable over and over and over. You can also use any sort of mason jar that you want. The thing is, you'll just want to adjust the ratios on this recipe to accommodate a smaller jar. So you can do a little simple math in your head if you want. I think it would be what, this is 24 ounces versus 32. So just put a little bit less of each ingredient in and you should be fine. So I've got my jar. As far as setup for your ingredients, I do recommend to use all organic. I mean, in general, I know that that is definitely an aspect of access and privilege. And if you are so lucky to live in a place that offers organic food at a price you can afford. So I also recommend to wash your produce as if it doesn't come from a garden that you trust. What else? Okay, I think we can get started. So on our recipe here, we're going to start with that horseradish. And this is a seasonal item, and I typically find it at Whole Foods. I've tried nearly every Asian market in the area and have been out of luck. So for me, if horseradish isn't available at Whole Foods, it's not available. In a pinch, I have ordered it on Etsy before from somebody's garden. So I happened to pre-buy a few horseradish roots, I think it was last year, and I froze them so that I could have them ready for the next time I made fire cider. I have chosen to chop mine and diced into little chunks, which is a fine method. The other thing is if you want to be a real superstar, this is where you're going to use your box grater and actually grate your horseradish root through the large section. And the benefit of using the box grater over dicing is that the more surface area you expose on any item that you're immersing in liquid, the more the liquid is able to extract those nutrients from it. So the idea of like when you put herbs into any sort of menstruum or liquid, you don't usually put the whole herb in it just like this. You want to chop it super finely into tiny pieces because that increased surface area really maximizes the amount of, in this case, minerals that we're extracting. So as you're all chopping or grating your horseradish root, again, just raise your hand or pop in the chat if you need more time. I have no idea how long this is going to take everybody to do since mine is already done, but I'll just keep rambling. What was I going to say? Yes, so the horseradish root. Now, what you're wanting here is to be completely overwhelmed with that aromatic sense of nose clearing, sinus clearing, spicy. You should feel it in your lungs and your breath. That is the medicinal component of horseradish root. And it is kind of one of the superstars of this recipe and why it's something we reach for when we have blocked sinuses or sinus infection, sniffly, stuffy nose. This is perfect. As you can see, as you're chopping, you're going to be feeling that nose passage clearing up. And horseradish root is highly antimicrobial. Research shows that it's actually especially antimicrobial against staph infection, E. coli bacteria, and candida yeast. It can be a nice thing to incorporate into maybe your daily wellness ritual, or when you are feeling like the bugs going around, you want to take it in maybe seasonally. And that's kind of what I do as the winter months come along and previous to the pandemic, when we were out and about without masks, I would just take a shot of vinegar in the morning just to kind of have my body feel prepared to ward off some of the bacteria and viruses that do go around. Now, horseradish root is also mildly diuretic. It's high in antioxidants and glucosinolate, which do help protect our body against free radical damage. So it is a cell protectant, and it also helps protect against disease and anti-aging, right? Because the free radical damage is what ages our cells. This is a preventative medicine as much as it is an acute medicine for active infection. The preventative medicinal components of each ingredient, as you'll see as we go through, is what makes it a tonic, right? It's something that we can take on a daily basis because it's mild and gentle enough for the liver to be taken daily, but it is also strong enough to treat acute infection and illness. We also have phytochemicals and compounds in the horseradish root that help stimulate digestion, as well as help us absorb nutrients better. All right, so how is everybody doing with their chopping and grating? I'm going to add my horseradish root here to my jar. And you can do that as you finish each step. Just kind of add it to your jar. I don't know that I'm going to use all of this because I want to save room. So I'm going to use about that. And remember, it's not a science. There's no hard, fast rules. You kind of just feel it out. And it's also a good way to sharpen your knife skills if they're not maybe your top 5 skills. All right, so then next, let's just get our onion out of the way. Do we want to do the onion next? No, actually, I'm going to save onion and garlic for last because they're the messiest. So I think we should do our citrus next. So for this, again, we want to use the skin and the juice, and you want to use some washed citrus. I'm just cutting the little nub off the end. It's also handy to have your composting bin nearby because you're going to be filling it with things for your garden. And so this, again, I'm probably just going to maybe quarter it because I want to still be able to squeeze all the juice out. And then we're going to throw the rinds in as well. Seeds can go in, it doesn't really matter. I have tried to come up with, so at the end of this, once we fill our jar, we're going to be straining it in a month. It needs about a month to sit and macerate here and allow all the minerals and nutrients to absorb into the vinegar. But at the end of it, you'll be left with what's called a marc. And that is basically just the plant material that is done. And I have tried to make lettuce wraps with this ingredient combination and didn't love it. So I no longer keep this, I compost it. But if it's something that you want to keep and try and maybe incorporate into a recipe, you could take your lemon seeds out so you're not eating them. But we can just juice it in there and then throw the rind in. Yeah. And then lemons are obviously really high in vitamin C, boosts immunity, helps to fight damage done by free radicals. Again, it's that anti-aging cell regeneration stuff. Helps stimulate the liver to produce bile, which helps us digest better. Relieves indigestion, upsets stomachs. Also wakeful, that limonene, that super citrusy smell that you get from the skin is very energizing and wakeful. So that can help give you a little boost of energy as well. Simply smelling it as you squeeze, you're going to notice that.
With citrus, isn't the pith right under the skin where all the bioflavonoids are, the complex Cs?
Oh, is that where they are?
Yep.
Okay, so another reason why you want to include that rind so that you can get the pith in there. And vinegar is really excellent at extracting bioflavonoids and minerals. So one of the things we think about when we're making medicine is basically what liquid will best extract the ingredient that we want to extract. So you can use oil, water, vinegar. What am I forgetting? Oil, water, vinegar, alcohol. And while alcohol is the best at extracting the most medicinal properties, hot water obviously does a lot for us in the tea realm. And then vinegar is adept at extracting minerals. So this is another reason why we associate fire cider with a wintertime craft and drink, is because of that mineral rich content. Oftentimes, again, not as relevant for us living in Los Angeles, but for the people who used to rely on things like this to have fresh food preserved for winter, they also needed a mineral rich kind of boost in their diet, as the winter months held less in the realm of, their leafy greens and things like that. So highly rich in minerals, great for your pregnant people, great for people that just maybe have struggle with low energy or things like that. It's a good way to get a little mineral boost that's obviously bioavailable because it's made from whole foods. It's not like trying to digest a multivitamin, this is just regular foods. So it's a bit more bioavailable. So now that we've done our citrus, let's do our ginger. Fresh ginger, again, you want to try and get organic. I also don't necessarily always peel my ginger. If I'm in a hurry, or, this is one of like 12 chores I have to do in a day, make the fire cider batch, I'm probably going to just chop it and throw it in the jar. But for the purpose of today, I will just show you this great trick, which is using a spoon to peel. It's very effective and very easy. I imagine that there's probably a lot of minerals in the skin of this ginger. I don't know if that's true. I haven't fact checked it, but usually that's the case with skins. So I've already washed this. I'm actually just going to chop it and put it in whole like this.
Just so you know, Gina, when I peel my ginger,
yeah,
I feed the peels to the chickens.
I think we all need some chickens just as a vessel of getting rid of great things that aren't ready for the compost. I think it's a great thing. I do feel bad even feeding my compost some of this high grade, nutrients. So chop, dice it. You want to get small pieces, again, increasing that surface area for maximum absorption. Another cool thing about our body is that as our nose begins to smell of food, it sends messages through our brain to prepare the correct enzymes in our gut to break down what we're about to eat. So the olfactory experience of really smelling a thing before you eat it is a wonderful way to help prepare your enzymes and your gut to really support you in digesting what you're about to eat. I'm curious if anybody has successfully grown either turmeric or ginger here in LA.
I have ginger growing in my garden right now. I don't know how it's going to do through the winter, but I got my fingers crossed. And it's all in pots, so if I have to get it, inside, I can do it easily.
I'm trying it for the first time too. It's in a pot.
Whoa.
I have no idea if it's already dead or not.
Well, mine has lots of foliage coming up.
Good sign.
Judy, if you want to unmute yourself and share your experience on growing ginger, please do.
Am I unmuted now?
You certainly are.
Okay, just a sec. I got my embroidery machine running in the background. It's probably too loud. Okay, I had never grown ginger before, so I just went to Sprouts and picked up one of those, you know, whatever they're called, the ginger root thing,
Yeah.
and stuck it in a grow pot, you know, one of the fabric pots.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually one of the ones that probably is 15 by 15 inches. And actually, when I was teaching the class for the master gardeners, I took the ginger down to the class. This was the Grow LA class. And I took it down and we all harvested it together. And I just basically dumped it out and it broke off beautifully and everybody went home with a piece of fresh ginger.
Ooh, was it the pink roots that you got?
No, no, it was just kind of a yellowish, you know, light brown. But I also, what was I going to say about the ginger? Oh, the secret was really keeping the pot moist because you really want to imitate, you know, the tropics. And so it's one of those things that I actually watered a little bit every day.
Wow. Okay. This is all helpful. Has that been your experience too, Gina?
I have never grown ginger. I've been a little intimidated just because of, you know, knowing that I need to imitate the tropics. It's a real commitment.
Well, the first time I grew ginger, I was really trying to overwinter it. And I finally got impatient and pulled it up. But apparently, if you let ginger grow long enough, it develops the most beautiful flowers. But it takes a couple of years to get there, so.
Well, I imagine like everything, homegrown fresh ginger is probably the most delicious version out there.
Yeah.
Just taste that. So anti-inflammatory, ginger. Anti-inflammatory, it's, I'm sure we have all used ginger to help with nausea or motion sickness in the form of a tea. In its raw form like this, not dried, it is the best for the anti-inflammatory, antiviral effects. And I learned that from this great book, which I'm going to show you. If you're curious or interested in learning more about natural remedies for antiviral kind of infections, this author, Harold Biener, is amazing. This book is amazing. And he actually talks about ginger quite a bit. And that's where I learned that if you want to have the immune boosting effects of ginger, it's got to be in its raw form. So we're doing that here. It's wonderful. Next, let's do, I guess it's time. We could do some herbs now. I'm really saving the onions for last because I think that we'll all need to go wash our hands. As far as the herbs go, this is kind of my favorite part of making fire cider, is the part where you get to go walk through your garden and appreciate that you have all of these things that are medicinal and you didn't even know it, and that all of these plants are providing incredible remedies and resources for us. And I think it's part of that beautiful collaborative effect, right? Of like, you're giving the plants life and you are cultivating them and growing them and tending them. And in return, you are able to utilize their beautiful medicinal components. I'm also going to talk about my 10 favorite herbs to grow in the garden. These are both culinary and medicinal. And honestly, there's no difference in many cases. So rosemary, or sage, which we think about as like, these are culinary herbs, but they're actually incredibly antimicrobial. Really wonderful, wonderful medicine. So I always like to include some rosemary, some garden sage. I have a bunch of oregano, which is probably one of my top favorite, most humble, powerful antimicrobial herbs. I tincture it with extra when I have an abundant surplus, or I'm cutting it back, say in the fall, is a great time to make a big tincture of your oregano or your thyme. You can even do a combination. I have lemon balm still, surprisingly, so I'm going to throw a little bit of that in. Lemon verbena. I've got some yarrow. You can really throw in here whatever you want. There are no rules. Things that might help you make your decision is flavor profile. It's going to be so flippin' spicy, though, that I think that getting nuanced flavor maybe isn't the goal, but you can decide maybe how citrusy you want it. If you're not big on that, then maybe leave out the lemon verbena and the lemon balm. But I am going to put these in, and I do like scissors for this because it's easy to cut tiny little pieces instead of chopping. So you can take this time to run out in your garden if you need to grab some more things. If you already have it, you can just begin to cut tiny pieces into your jar. You can also rip it with your fingers. Like, you don't need, again, people have been making this medicine for thousands of years. You don't need any fancy tools. And I do want to reiterate that it can just be whatever you have on hand. Something I forgot to mention about the onion is that while I said there are no rules for fire cider, there are a couple of scientific facts, and that can help you make your decisions on what you want to put in here. One of them is that when choosing what onions you use, you can use a shallot, you can use red, yellow, white, purple, any of that is fine. And then for your garlic, you do want to use a hard neck garlic or porcelain type. Those are the most medicinal because they're the highest in alanine. And that is the compound that, when exposed to air, converts to allicin. And if you guys have ever taken garlic pills or anything like that, it's allicin extract. And we know that helps, you know, with blood pressure and lowering LDL cholesterol, lowers risk of cancer, reduces inflammation, strengthens your immune system. It neutralizes free radicals, again, with that anti-aging cell regeneration work. And so actually, the longer that your chopped or crushed garlic sits exposed to air, the stronger it tastes. And in this case, I think we want strong garlic. If you are making a dish for somebody who is sensitive to the flavor of garlic, maybe you want to chop it right before you use it. But that is interesting. And once you get all of your herbs in here, we'll just move on to garlic because we're talking about it. I do really delight in, I think my favorite room in the house is the kitchen. And it seems to me, the more I think about it, there's just this poetry that can happen in the kitchen because it's a confluence, you know, it's like this meeting ground between the garden and the house. And it's where a lot of magic happens. So this is where you get to appreciate your harvest and all of your hard work and really enjoy the fruits of your labor, literally. But what I would love to do is make a fire cider with ingredients, every ingredient that I've grown. So I guess we're gonna work on our onions and garlic this year. I am using some homegrown jalapenos, limes, lemon. That's it though. I've never grown horseradish. We have a little pepper that I did grow. But we'll chop our garlic now.
One of the joys of our community in this area is that chances are, if you don't grow something, somebody in our network does, and you can swap out.
Sue, that is a really great point. Thank you. Yes, she's exactly right. So I think, again, part of the magic that happens in the kitchen or in the apothecary, it's the same thing, is that it's a collaborative. It can be collaborative if you choose. And I think that's where the origin of kitchen work and garden work and medicine work is all collaborative, where it's a great opportunity to trade with your neighbors and see what they have. I know that my next door neighbor always has a lot of lemons and I have a ton of limes. And so we do little swaps. It's a good excuse to start talking to people. And it's a good excuse to exchange labor for goods. You know, I know that I have a neighbor who has a huge persimmon tree, and every year I go over there, and it started with me just knocking on their door or leaving notes. I'll do sometimes, and they'll let me come pick persimmons in exchange for some jam, you know? So I think that's something we long for, is that sort of sense of community. And Sue's right, that's what we're aiming to build here at Slola and in our gardens.
And that's very much what this group is about too, is community.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's a great chance to plug the fact that we are going to be live at the Altadena Community Farmers Market this Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody has seed orders, they have the opportunity to go pick them up and check out the farmers market while they're there. It's a wonderful farmers market, by the way.
I feel like if you're a part of Slola, you're probably kind of a nerd, like I know all of us are that volunteer. And so I get really excited about things like closed loop systems, you know, and when I make anything in the kitchen, but especially something like fire cider with so many components, there's just this, it's like weaving this huge fabric of, again, community, but also it's like what I'm putting in my jar that comes from my garden, I then am able to put all the scraps into my compost that I'm going to feed to the ingredients that go into this jar, right? And that's what a closed loop system is it, you know, everything supports the process as a whole. And I just get so excited about it. There's no waste here. There's no waste. And if you're lucky enough to have chickens or goats or somebody that would eat it, even better, you know? So I'm gonna add my whole head of garlic here. You guys can just put it in. We're making kind of this cute layered situation. We're gonna shake it up at the end, so don't worry about that. Okay, I think it's onion time.
Ah!
It's onion time. Again, I've already done my crying before I was on camera, so excited for all of you to begin. And when you finish that, you'll put it in your jar. But I do always think about that when I'm cutting my onion and crying. Like this, even this, like the power of the onion to clean the eyes, right? And bring moisture to dry eyes is lovely. And it's kind of a little flush. You can turn anything into a plastic, right?
I have never thought about chopping onions as bringing moisture to the eyes. But I love that image.
Really try it.
Why it brings moisture to your eyes.
So onion, yeah, we want this to take up 1/4 to 1/3 of our jar. If you're into ratios and math, if you're not, just fill a jar, it's fine. We'll talk about onions, antibacterial, antifungal. They strengthen our immune system. They're antioxidant. I don't know if you guys are noticing the trend, but nearly every ingredient here has multiple multiple functions, and many of which I'm noticing as well are very similar. So again, with that cell, feeding the cells, helping them shake off the free radicals. Onions are also able to help fight cancer. They're rich in flavonoids that protect from heart disease. I had a dear friend who was in her 90s, and she was Russian, and we were actually in class together, and she pulled out an onion and bit it like an apple and just sat there and ate an entire onion in front of me. And it blew me away. It was like, I had never thought that could happen. Like, what do you mean you can just eat an onion like that? But yeah, oh yeah, this is what my family does. My grandmother has always done this. And she was spry and energetic and healthy. So I'm not sure if that's her secret to longevity, but I do know that nearly every culture has a long history of using these ingredients that we're using today. And I would actually be curious to hear if anybody can think about or recall or think of any times where their parents or grandparents, family members had shared a home remedy or a folk remedy. And it might be as subtle as, yeah, taking some onion or a spoonful of honey or ginger for stomach ache, peppermint. This is all herbal medicine, but it's been incorporated into kind of this very easily approachable way.
Many years ago, I bought a spiralizer that was produced in Japan, and the copy and the instructions for using this thing were very interestingly translated. And one of the things it talked about was using the spiralizer to slice onions, because onions were energy food. And I had never thought of onions that way. I have a friend who is Japanese, and one time she was visiting and I showed her these instructions and I said, energy food? Are onions considered energy food in Japan? And she looked at me like I was nuts and said, well, yes. It's like, okay.
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then while your hands are nice and juicy from that onion, go ahead and chop your peppers, because you're definitely gonna wash your hands after that. I have pre-cut here a jalapeno from my garden. You can use dried peppers. I don't even know what this is, but use it. Use any pepper. You can use a little dash of cayenne. You can just kind of get creative with this part. You know your tolerance for heat. And if you need to test it, I'm including my jalapeno seeds because I want a little bit extra heat. Give it a test to see the spice level, because you might want to add more or less. You can always add, but you can't take it away. So go slow. Okay. This jalapeno is more like a bell pepper. So I'm going to add a lot of cayenne. I'm gonna also then, I'll give everybody a minute to wash hands if that's what you need to do. I'll talk about ways that I like to use fire cider. My top is as a salad dressing, and that comes as no surprise because our base is apple cider vinegar. But I will say that when I've made this salad for guests and friends, I am always asked, what is this dressing? Like, what is this? It's a secret weapon, because it is so dynamic and so full of so many incredible flavors that have married for over a month, just sitting here infusing into that, that vinegar, that when you mix it with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper, it's incredible. And it can turn any basic salad into this very lovely experience. So I would say my top is salad dressing. I've also put it in lentils. You can throw a little spoonful into bone broth because that vinegar helps, again, extract the minerals from the bones. Salads. People like to take a shot every day. I think it's a good move. a lot of vinegar, like if I did a whole shot, it can upset my stomach sometimes. So I like to do like a half. But this is a fun thing to make your roommates or your family do on a daily basis through the winter, is just pour everybody vinegar shots in the morning, especially those people that have a hard time waking up. It's a really, they might hate you, or you might be able to get a laugh out of it, because it's a strong way to start the day. Whew. So for me, I hope everybody's kind of there. The last thing I'm going to add is a little bit of turmeric powder. And I say that on this sheet here, that powdered turmeric is actually more bioavailable than the raw, which surprises me as well. But I'm going to just put a little bit in. I'm not measuring it. I maybe did a half of this spoon, right? You can do as much as you want. It does give a bit of a earthy flavor to your blend, and it can be more solid. It doesn't fully dissolve in the solution. So if you're okay with a little bit of a film, use that turmeric. And then you always want to include black pepper when you're working with turmeric, because that piperine, I think I'm saying that right, that's in black pepper, is the active ingredient, is what helps our body absorb the curcumin in the turmeric.
Turmeric is also a known anti-inflammatory.
There you go.
Yeah.
Also medicine, this beautiful, humble spice. So I think that should be everything, you guys. You don't add the honey until you've strained it. And I actually, true confession, I don't ever add honey to my fire cider. That's just me. It's for two reasons. One, because I like to be very mindful with how I intake sugar. And I'm usually not looking for sweetness when I go for my fire cider. I'm looking for a vinegar dressing. So I personally don't add honey, but you're more than welcome to, and that is traditional. And if you are going to do that, you want to get raw, unfiltered honey. Zorthian Ranch is my usual local resource for honey, right up on Fair Oaks. But if you can't get super local honey, then just make sure you're finding some good raw, unfiltered honey. So here is the fun part. You're going to shake your bottles to dislodge the yeast and mother at the bottom. And then you're just going to cover, you're going to pour it and cover. You want to immerse all of your ingredients in your jar. And again, this is going to sit for 30 days. Put it somewhere where you're going to walk by it every day, because you will want to shake it once a day. Get your lid on there tight and give it a really good shake. Woo. You're just kind of mixing everything up. If you're using dried herbs, those are going to absorb some of the liquid. You can reassess and see if you need to top it off once things settle. So you want to, if you can, find a jar that you can fill to the top, and that is strategic. So I didn't actually finish all of my vinegar. I have a little bit left. That means I probably added a lot more veggies this time. I like to save my empty vinegar bottle, because that is what I end up decanting back in. And then I just throw, nothing fancy here. I've just written fire cider, and I keep this along with a plain in my cabinet, but I do reach for the fire cider every time I make a salad. So hang on to your empty bottle if you want, or if you have something cuter, you may do that as well. The next step is you're going to want to label this with the date and what it is. And it's obvious, you probably don't have a whole lot of jars sitting around that look like this, but if you did, or if you're making a tea or a tincture, anything else, they can all start to look the same after a while, and there's no way to know. So you're going to always want to label it with the date and what it is. Today is December 4th. And there you have it. I do want to show you. So again, 30 days, you're going to let this sit. You're going to shake it once a day. When it has been 30 days, these are the tools that I like to use. If you don't have a nut milk strainer, that's fine. You probably have a colander. And so you're gonna pour this out, and you can either take a spoon or just your hand and just mash it. You wanna get all of the juices out of every component of this. Remember that the vinegar that is held deepest in these ingredients is going to be the most potent. So you want to squeeze the absolute heck out of all of this if you can, as much as your joints will allow you to. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And what you'll be left with is fire cider. And I would love to see, we have a couple of minutes, if anybody has any questions.
Do you need to refrigerate it?
No, thank you.
Ooh.
Really shelf stable. Leave it in your pantry. It's going to be good for a long time, at least a year, but
Nice.
longer.
Okay, if anyone else has questions, please unmute yourself and speak up. Okay, Gina, do you want to talk real quickly a little bit about folk medicines and how they've evolved?
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, this is something that comes from every lineage, and every ancestral line has their own folk medicines. And depending on the ingredients in it, you can tell that if it's a North American, or it's a Chinese heritage, or it's Native American, or it's, you know, you can kind of tell based on where the herbs are from that are in the recipe. So this contains mostly North American herbs that are pretty commonly found across Europe and North America. But there are interpretations too for every country and heritage. Folk medicine really is just the people's medicine. So you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to have a degree. These are accessible medicines that kind of give us sovereignty in our health, and act as preventative and acute medicine. You know, I think every house can have pantries stocked with things like fire cider and feel a little bit more equipped for if people get sick.
Okay, it looks like people have gotten their hands clean because questions are popping up in the chat here. One question, let's see. Whitney wants to know, would a shot a day of fire cider be good for preventative?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. I mean, if you think about everything we just put in here, you're going to get a little dose of that on a daily basis. So it actually boosts your immune system. It's helpful for anyone that has tricky digestion issues. Again, you're like stimulating bile production, you're stimulating enzyme production. It's antioxidant, anti-aging, anti-cancer. I mean, incredible health benefits. So if you took a shot every day, I think your body would love you for it.
Okay, Victor wants to know, should you not open the jar during that 30 days, but only shake it?
Oh, it doesn't matter. You can open the jar, but you don't need to.
Okay. Charlene wants to know, can she use her white sage from the garden?
Yes, absolutely. That is something that I wanted to talk about, was kind of like top 10 herbs to grow. And one of those is the sages. And there's so many kinds of sages, but what a great way to incorporate some of our natives into cooking. White sage, again, anytime you crush the leaf of a plant and you get that strong volatile oil smell. So all the herbs we discussed today, white sage is on that list, Cleveland sage, oh gosh, any of those plants that you crush the leaf and it's like a pungent essential oil smell, that means it's really strong and volatile oils. And oftentimes those oils are rosemary and things like that, that are all antimicrobial, antibacterial. White sage would be perfect.
Okay, Diane is asking, if you happen to get sick and you've got a viral thing going on, what's a good dosage?
Oh, I would You know, depends on how badly you want it gone and how your stomach is. Like if you can tolerate a lot of vinegar, I would say that there's no such thing as too much fire cider, because again, all these ingredients are in the form of a tonic, which is something that can be taken often and frequently. It wouldn't be the same if we were talking about like oregano oil, like the oregano oil you get at Whole Foods or whatever, like that has negative implications just if taken over time. But something like this, where it's just whole oregano in here, you could take it all day long, every hour if you needed to. But again, that depends on your stomach and your digestion. And if a lot of vinegar really gets, you know, is going to flow through you, then maybe 3 times a day.
Cool. Now, I personally have a crazy question. I sort of kind of hate horseradish.
Uh-huh.
What if I were to make this without the horseradish?
Fine. Totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other things would still keep it pretty effective?
Yes. I'm trying to think if there's something else that just clears the nasal passage in that same way that horseradish does. I mean, cayenne, honestly, spicy, that's still going to get your nose running. You're going to get all kinds of benefits. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll break down and, you know, try some horseradish.
Just a tiny bit, yeah. Yeah,
but not necessarily in the amount that you've got there.
Yes, that is fine. And that's a perfect example of really this, you get to make this how you want it, what works for you. There's no point in making something that you're not going to drink, which is why you want to be mindful of how much spice, and if you want honey or you don't like one ingredient, don't put it in, because the whole idea is you want to make something that you'll actually take. Medicine is pretty useless if you don't take
it. Good point. Good point. Oops. Well, you know, we have gone over our hour. Jessica, would you like to step back in? This has been fascinating, though. Totally fascinating. I think everybody
here I am.
Agrees.
Okay.
Okay. Whitney says, could I use food processor to grate up the horseradish, onion, etc.? Can she run it through her food processor?
Absolutely.
Great way to chop it up fine, right?
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. It's like you have more dishes to do, but your hands are cleaner. I get that. That's a toss-up.
And Victor asked, how do you know when it's ready? That's just the 30-day mark, right?
Yeah. And if you're curious about the process, something you can do too, and this is with any medicine making that requires maceration or letting a liquid draw from the plant, you can taste it every day if you want to, and just watch the process and say it's 3 weeks and you're like, oh, that's spicy enough for me, or I like it right now how it is, then pull it and drain your stuff, you know. But if you're curious about the process, absolutely, you can taste it along the way and kind of see how you're liking it.
Just so you know, Gina, there are lots of kudos for you in the chat. Mm-hmm. People saying thank you, you're wonderful, you know, all the things we know about you. It's nice to see people saying it too.
I'm really glad that everyone's been so patient to put up with this brand new format here. We've never done a workshop on Zoom or with Slola, so it's a lot of new for us, and I appreciate everybody's patience.
And at least one person has asked if we could get other workshops like this down the road. And I have to agree with that one.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was awesome.